Hello YouTube, Pastor Jack here. Welcome to my study and welcome to my YouTube channel, First Things First with Pastor Jack. I got a little different video I'm going to do for you today. Just started feeling led of God about the middle of the day today to talk about this for a few minutes. And I guess, to be totally honest with you, something I saw on YouTube made me think about it and got me really thinking about it. Me and my wife, we watch a lot of YouTube, and there's one channel we watch. I think it's called Daily Dose of Crime, and me being an ex-cop, kind of enjoy watching that a little bit. It's one of the shows. I'm not recommending it to you. If you are a very sensitive person, you might not want to watch it, but it's one of the crime YouTube shows. It's not always showing murder and stuff like that. It'll just be sometimes, where they pull a car over and talk to the people. And, but anyway, normally the people get arrested. But, I was watching it and I watched a couple of them, and there was a certain race of people that was, you know, uh, whatever happened some different things happened on each of them. One of them was a car wreck. Another one was somebody got arrested for DUI, and I don't know. But their families showed up, and their families was doing all this yelling, screaming, and carrying on. And I'm thinking how different that is than what I would do or I would used to. And I was reminded of something by God, and I want to share it with you today. And so the question that I'll ask you is, how many races are there? How many races do you think they are? If you're going to use the scripture as your basis for you can have an opinion, and it's okay as long as don't try to say the Bible is the basis of opinion if you think there's some number of like 300 or 400 races. But if you're going to use the Bible for your worldview and you're going to use the Bible to form your opinion from, there's only one race. It's called the human race. And there's no other races, just one. Now, we all look different, yes. We talk different. We watch one YouTube channel where it shows working accidents, for people at work and something happens and, place falls apart, whatever. And they'll show one, and a Chinese person it'll be in a Chinese place, and they start talking Chinese. And I said, look, honey, it scared them so bad they can't even talk English. And, we talk different. Even in the English culture, we talk different. And I'm sure all the other cultures, although I probably couldn't tell which part of China somebody lived in by the way they talked, I bet there are people in China that could tell which part of China they're from by the way they talk. There was two horrifying events took place in Genesis, and we need to, as Christians, we need to understand those. One was a flood, and all it left was Noah and his family on the ark. But there was another horrifying event, and just as horrifying. Matter of fact, it might even be more catastrophic. Although a lot of people died in the flood, that's true. But as far as being horrifying, the Tower of Babel probably was more so. Let's say that we don't know exactly when the Tower of Babel took place. We know it was, that Noah's family was told to move and replenish the earth and refill the earth. And the animals did what they were supposed to, but the humans kind of all stuck together, and they started building this Tower of Babel. And now it's probably down to Noah's grandchildren or the patriarchs, I guess, or maybe even his great grandchildren. But God said they're not going to do what I told them to. So one morning they woke up and they all spoke different languages. Each family spoke their own language. So, say my family, we could all communicate and understand each other, but the family next door, we couldn't understand nothing they were saying. Can you imagine how horrifying that would be to wake up one morning and you can't understand nobody but your family? And the Bible said they spread pretty quick because they were scared all over the face of the earth. They all run in different directions. And God used that to, he used it to slow men's education of themselves down, the science, how, exactly what it was the Tower of Babel like. Well, I don't know, but God said I'm going to have to slow this down, and I got to get them to separate. And so he caused the language difference to take place. And they all went their separate ways. They were getting pretty smart. They were getting, we don't know. I don't know. But they all went their separate ways. And as they did that, of course, now people talk one language and understood themselves probably went together, and the people that talked another language went a different way and a different way and a different way and a different way. As they went different ways, of course, the way our DNA works, I like Ken Ham's explanation. I'll use it. He talks about dogs, long-haired dogs, medium-haired dogs, and short-haired dogs. And so if the long-haired dogs went towards the equator, they're probably going to get hot. And they're taking the DNA with them, although they had some DNA in them for shorter-haired dogs or medium-haired dogs. But the long-haired dogs started dying off, and all the long-haired dog DNA over a period of time died out to where all that was left at the equator was short-haired dogs. The same dog breed went to the north, and the short-haired dogs froze to death, and the medium-haired dogs might have not made it well, but the long-haired dogs did okay, and so they got to where all that was in the north was long-haired dogs. In the middle between the equator and the pole, maybe the medium-haired dogs become the most popular. So you can see how that although the dogs that left the Tower of Babel all look probably similar, based on their DNA and the environment that they lived in, it was survival of the fittest. And they were able to survive. The short-haired dogs around the equator, the medium-haired dogs around the middle of the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, and the long-haired dogs at the top or the bottom of the northern or southern hemisphere. So the same thing happened with people. The people around the equator got a lot more sun, and the people like my grandson, who is red-haired and fair-skinned, if he tried to live the equator, he might not make it long. He has to play golf, and he loves to play golf, he has to wear special suntan lotion. Whereas people with real dark skin went to the north, didn't get a lot of sun, and they would die out, and the ones that had the lighter skin would survive, and with the less sunlight, the ones that had dark skin turned lighter. So it turned out where lighter skinned people was in the north hemisphere, close to the North Pole, and the southern hemisphere close to the South Pole, and people with darker toned skin become around the equator. And so you can see how that when people moved out all over the world that we started looking different. So we talk different and we're looking different, but we're the same race, human race. But when people look different and talk different, it causes things to happen in your life. And I call these things filters. And we see things through this filter that we have developed. When I was a kid, my mother had a sister that lived close to where my mom and dad's house was. They lived close. Before I was born, well, right after I was born, in the late 1950s, and I think they moved just outside of Chicago. I know for a fact when I was a teenager, they lived in Gary, Indiana. They had lived in several suburbs of Chicago. They moved there so my uncle could get a job, and he got a job working on cars. I think he worked at some GM plant up there. And he worked there until he retired. I really liked my uncle. He was a Cubs fan, and when we'd go up there, he'd take me to see the Cubs play at Wrigley Field, and I really loved him. But he had a daughter that married a Yankee from up there that used to torment me. You know, when I was a kid, he would just make fun of the way I talked. And as I got older, I tormented him back quite a bit. But at the same time, that filter stuck with me. And as I got older and, I got where, but to be honest with you, before the internet, for some of you people who don't know, if you needed some information about some company, you would call AT&T 1-800 directory and get a 1-800 number for that company, and then you would call and ask questions, if you wanted to order something or, this was before the internet. And I was at a place at one time in my life, if I called a 1-800 number and a Yankee answered, I'd just hang up. I wouldn't even talk to him. And that was because of filters that I had developed as a kid going to Chicago. When I was a police officer, I started realizing I was building some filters. I don't know if you've ever thought about it or not, but a police officer, all day long at work, they meet the crud of the earth people for the most part. For the most part, everybody they have to talk to is some kind of criminal, or if it's a good person, it's the worst day of their life because somebody just broke in their house, or somebody, they crashed their car, or somebody stole their car, or, one of their kids that they didn't know was on drugs. You just arrest them for drugs, and now you go to their house to tell them that their kid's in jail. Police officers, normally you're dealing with the crud of the earth, and when you do deal with a normal person, it is usually the worst day of their life when you're dealing with them. And you can develop a real issue. Your filters get to the place that you start thinking everybody's the crud of the earth. And then I had an extra problem. I was in my 20s and bulletproof. I've told you that before. I thought I was bulletproof. And in my hometown, I don't know if it's still a town. We have 2 super Walmarts. I don't know if we're a small city or a town now. But anyway, when I was a police officer, it was a town. And, the blacks, for the most part, lived on the east side of town. And the whites, for the most part, lived on the west side of town. And they put the young cops on the east side of town because we had to get out and run some black youth, because they would run from you. And and as I now am almost 70, I can understand why they didn't want to put a 60-year-old cop over there, because, and again, I didn't mind. But I got to the place that I'm starting to think, man, every black person I deal with is just the crud of the earth. And so you build these filters up, and it affects how you think about people. And we have this horrible thing called a memory. God, some way, can remember things and it not affect what he thinks. We didn't get that as humans. We didn't get that. And, there's husband and wives watching this right now. And men, if you think your wife has ever forgot anything you did wrong, you probably are wrong. Again, we remember, and we have these filters. And, we need to understand that we got these set of filters that we see everything through. And so we need to be very mindful as Christians that we don't let those things affect us. You might have had somebody made fun of you, when you was a kid that was, a Cincinnati Reds fan. And so you just hate all the Cincinnati Reds anymore in baseball. Can't stand it. College football's going on right now, and I live just a few miles from Georgia and not that far from Alabama. I live in Tennessee, but there's people that hate Tennessee fans just because they're Tennessee fans, and they go back and look at it. There was a Tennessee fan somewhere in the past had not treated them well. And you can say the same for Georgia fans and Alabama fans and all the other kind of fans. As Christians, we shouldn't let those things affect us. I'm not saying that we cannot have the filters, but we can choose whether to use those filters or not. When it comes to Yankees, I had prayed and God helped me to not use that filter anymore. When it comes to blacks, I'd got to the place at the police department, and I prayed, and God got me another job, and I don't use that filter anymore. And we can, through God's help, not use those filters, but we need to understand that they're there. And when it comes to illegal aliens in our country right now, I think we probably need to apply what I'm saying today. I'm an American, and I have certain rights. And one of the rights is to think what I want to, and that's okay. But if I'm using the wrong filters, I need to try my best to fix that. And I've seen Christians that used the wrong filters and thought everybody that was dark color skin was an illegal alien. I was in the grocery store here in town the other day, and there was this family talking. They using Spanish, and I watched this elderly gentleman looking at him like, and I know he was thinking. He didn't say nothing, but I know he was thinking, I wonder if they're illegal. And because they're speaking Spanish. We need to be careful of filters that we use. Now, should people be in our country illegally? No. And as a Christian, I should back up law enforcement, ICE, whoever, as they enforce the laws of our country. Now, if I don't like a law, if I don't like a law, then it's all right for me to vote and to try to put people in office that will change the law the way I want the law to be. That is 100% okay. But to take action against a police officer just trying to enforce the law, or say bad things about him, or give him a hard time, that's not the Christian thing to do. There's people that I have dealt with, and I don't know whether it were illegal or not. I don't know. I know I used to own some apartments, and I had a guy that I normally, when somebody moved out of one of my apartments, I would change all the carpet out. I found it was cheaper to buy new carpet and pay somebody to take the old out and put new carpet in than it was to clean it. Now, it probably wasn't cheaper, but at least it had brand new carpet in it, and people moving in liked it having new carpet. So that's worth a little bit to me. And then I would have them repainted every time. While the carpet was torn out, I would have a guy come in and paint the apartment. And then that way it was freshly painted, brand new carpet every time somebody moved in. And I had this guy that painted for me, and he, one time I had somebody move out and I needed it done pretty quick, and he just couldn't do it. He was busy and he couldn't do it. So I called a real estate guy in town. And he said, well, do you care if Mexicans come and do it? And I said, well, they do a good job. He said, yeah, they do a good job. I said, I don't care. And so I got a phone call in a little while, and this guy could speak little English. And so I met him over at the townhouse the next day. showed him, what needed to be painted. He gave me a price, which is a lot better than what the other price that I got. And I said, when will you be done? And he said, lunch. And I said, what day? And he said, today. And I said, you'll be done at lunch today? And of course, I'm thinking, man, it's going to be an awful job. I mean, the other guy would take 2 or 3 days to paint this 2-bedroom townhouse apartment. And so I said, okay, I'll be back with your money at lunch. And so I took my wife over there with me, and we went in. And they probably was, I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say 17 Mexicans in there painting. It was a lot. And we walked around. We couldn't find anything wrong. They did a great job. And I paid him his money, and I said, why did you get so many people here? And he said, your culture is different. Again, we grew up in different places. We have different filters. And he said, tonight we all will have supper. Tomorrow somebody will have a job, and we'll all have supper again. And I remember that, and do I want everybody to have to go back to where they come from? Now, there's some good people, they are some good people. But the law is the law. And as long as it's the law, then I can't say nothing to anybody for enforcing the law, and I'm not going to get in their way. That would not be the right thing for a Christian. But it doesn't mean that I might not want to get somebody in office that maybe could work on it and maybe take people out that just do crimes. I know that being an illegal alien is a crime, and so I'm all for it. I'm all for backing it up the way the law is written right now. But I also can see that they probably are people who are good people that we maybe should consider some way, and I don't know how. I honestly don't know how. But the bottom line is, and what I want to make sure that you understand from this and what God's led me to say to you, is that we're one race. One race. Do we all have to see everything the same? We can't, because we have different filters. We come from different places, and understand they might see it different than you do. But at the same time, we all have to live by the law of the land. And the Scripture teaches us that. And we should support that. And we should, if we want to see the law change, if there's enough people who want to see the law change, then they can elect people who will change the law. And who knows, they might come up with something even better than any of us ever thought of. But the bottom line is we see things different. And sometimes that person that sees it different than you is a Christian. And you can talk to them and make sure they understand they're looking through filters that not everybody's got. And they might want to think their position and be more careful with what they say. Because we're going to stand before God one day. And we're going to give an account for everything that we do. Whether it's good or bad, we're going to give an account. I'm not dreading the good stuff, but I ain't got a lot of that. But I am dreading the bad stuff, and I've got quite a bit of that, and I think most of us do. Remember, there's one race, and we all need to make sure that we taking care of each other. God bless you. Keep it first things first. I'll see you on the next video, if there is one.